All right, everyone. For this class, I'm just gonna be giving you a little bit of background about basic elements of semiology. Some of you, one or two of you, might have taken the Media Culture and Society class with me, so I've already uh, given these elements of semiology in that class, but I think it's really important to understand semiotics, at least at a basic level, also for the media and identity class. To understand where semiotics, the science of signs or studying signs, comes from, we have to go back to the beginning of the 20th century when the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure published this important book, The Course in General Linguistics, in which he begins for the first time to study language as a formal system, right? A system that has a clear set of rules that can be studied formally. And among the key Saussurean concepts, there is the distinction between language and speech, and the distinction between signifier and signified. And Saussure had a wide influence on a number of important thinkers of the 20th century, including Roland Barthes, who was an important semiotician, Jacques Lacan in the field of psychoanalysis, and Claude Lévi-Strauss in the field of anthropology. So for Saussure, language is the social side of speech outside the individual who can never create nor modify it for himself. It exists only by virtue of a sort of contract signed by members of the community. And as I say, such contract is based on formal rules that can be studied and analyzed. By contrast, speech is the executive side of language. At this very moment, I'm exercising my ability to speak. So speech always belongs to the individual. It is always actual, present, heterogeneous, unpredictable, and it is through speech that language evolves over time through the introduction, for example, of new terms, of slang terms, of jargon. And Saussure also really reflects on the nature of the linguistic sign, which he divides in two parts. It's like a coin with two sides, right? There is a concept and a sound image associated to it. The latter, says Saussure, is not the material sound, a purely physical thing, but the psychological imprint of the sound, the impression that this sound makes on our senses. I call the combination of a concept and a sound images as a sign. I propose to retain the word sign to designate the whole and to replace concept and sound images respectively with signified and signifier. And the bond between the signifier and the signified is for Saussure always arbitrary. There is, for example, the word arbor in French to denotes the concept of tree, but in English we use the word tree. In Italian we use the word albero. So there is no way of establishing a natural relationship between signifier and signified, but such relationship is always conventional, and it is determined by the community of speakers who make use of such signs. Another important distinction, and here this is a distinction that can be applied both to linguistic science and to sciences in general, is the distinction between denotation and connotation. Denotation is the literal translation of a sign to its meaning. For example, these two intersecting lines, right, in our culture, we refer to these lines in English as a cross, right? Connotation instead is the set of possible meanings associated with a sign, right? So it depends on concept, on context. On a street sign, a cross can signify a road intersection. In a church, it can be the symbol of Christianity. That means that denotation is always present, right? Right now, this X denotes a cross, but what it means is always requires an effort and requires us to place that sign in context. So to denotation and connotation, we can also associate two other important concepts, syntax and paradigm. Because denotation is always present, it is derived from the meaningful combination of different words. As I'm reading now, I'm moving basically on a horizontal axis, right? I'm shaping a sentence. But in choosing the words that I need to choose every time I speak, I'm selecting those words from a range of possible options, right? From the ensemble of all the available words that I have in my vocabulary. So this is the paradigmatic dimension, the axis of selection, which is always present in a certain sense through its absence. And this diagram shows, I think, pretty well the relationship between the paradigmatic axis and the syntagmatic axis. So for example, if we consider this ad, we might say that this ad works almost exclusively on the paradigmatic level. The author of this ad could have written the ad in a completely different way. He could have written "Love Jesus simply" in one sentence. And instead, he or she chose to put their three words followed by full stops, right? Love Jesus simple. And to associate these terms with the background of a stained glass, presumably of a church, right? And to invite the viewer, I saw this ad on a Boston public bus, right? The viewer to think about the meaning of these words one by one, right? And therefore to kind of trigger a set of associations in absentia, right? In through the larger meaning that these words have within our culture. So Barth makes use of the terms denotation and connotation in the text you have to read for today. And I also want to make a reference to mythologies. We have encountered mythologies in Dick Hebdige's text in the introduction of subculture. And Barth says that myth is a type of speech that preys on pre-existing meanings. It is a second-order semiological system or meta-language wherein a sign belonging to the first system, so this is the first system, is emptied out of its meaning, of its original meaning, we might say, to become a signifier in a second system, right? Which is the system of myth. So he makes the example, for example, of this front cover of Paris Match, French magazine. This was published, I think, in the late 50s, 59, 60, as the decolonization war was going on in Algeria. And the connotations of Frenchness, militariness, and relative ethnic difference tells us, writes Barth, that France is a great empire, that all her sons, without any color discrimination, faithfully serve under her flag, and that there is no better answer to the detractors of an alleged colonialism than the zeal shown by this Negro in serving his so-called oppressors. So this particular individual here, whose story we may never know, becomes a symbol of something else, right? So the first order semiological system would be the story of this particular person, but in actual fact, this image is put on the front cover of this mainstream French magazine to signify all these things. So it is emptied out of its original specific meaning to assume this larger symbolic and ultimately ideological function. And as a matter of fact, the concept of mythology is very close to that of ideology. Barth also says another couple of things about the relationship between images and text, and in particular in the text you're reading for today, Rhetoric of the Image, which is a very layered and complex text. You will see all like the Barth technique of unpacking all these layers of the possible meanings of an image. He says that images are in fact polysemic, that is, they always can mean multiple things, and that texts often serve to contain the ambiguity of an image by reinforcing an intended meaning. So these are two news wires taken at the time of the Katrina flooding in New Orleans, right? And you can see that a young man walks through chest-deep flood water after looting a grocery store in New Orleans on Tuesday, August 30, 2005. And then a different news wire writes that two residents wade through chest-deep water after finding bread and soda from a local grocery store after Hurricane Katrina came through the area in New Orleans. So we can see, of course, the coverage of Katrina has been accused of being racist, and this could be, an example of how two white people are labeled as residents, whereas a black person is not a resident but a looter. Text can also serve another function, which Barthes describes the function of relay. And the function of relay is to move the action forward by allowing the reader to interpret messages as part of an unfolding narrative. This is the case with cartoons. If we would remove the text from these cartoon balloons, we would probably no longer understand the sense of this narrative, or we could understand it in multiple ways. So my questions is actually a very simple one. It's more of an exercise, and I'm asking you to post a link to an ad or upload an image of an ad to the blog, or embed the video of an ad and describe very simply the denotation, the literal meaning, and the connotation, and I would say perhaps the set of possible connotations associated with the ad. To upload images, this is a technical thing. You have to use the media tab. You have to go into the admin function. You should not just reply a comment, but post a comment from the shell, basically, of WordPress. So you go to media, you add a new image, you upload the image from your computer, and then the WordPress will give you a URL. So you copy and paste the URL into the comment, and that will allow you to display the image on the WordPress blog if you do not want to post just a link. It's better if you upload images, because in this way we do not have to click on all the links to understand what you are referring to. Please do not upload videos to WordPress, because we have only 1 GB at our disposal. If you want to make a reference to a video, then embed the video in the comment, as we've done in the past. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to reading your comments and your descriptions of denotation and connotation. Thank you very much.